Dear students, welcome to the online class of English Literature. The first lesson is Anansi and Five. Children, the story is about a strange creature named Anansi. Anansi was very selfish, cunning, and mean. The story tells us how his greedy nature led to his downfall. Now open your book to page number 35. Anansi and Five. Once upon a time, long ago, there lived a creature called Anansi. Sometimes Anansi was a spider. Sometimes he was a man. And other times he was a strange mix of the two. Anansi was a trickster and he was having a difficult time. He had no money to buy food for his family. As he walked around the village early one morning, he had a scowl on his face and a growl in his stomach. So children, Anansi was a strange creature. Sometimes Anansi was a spider, sometimes he was a man, and other times he was a strange mix of both. Anansi was a trickster. Children, trickster means a mischievous character. So Anansi was a mischievous character. He had no money to buy food for his family, so he was facing a lot of difficulties. One day, while he was walking around the village, he had a scowl. Scowl means an angry expression. So he had an angry expression on his face and a growl. Growl means low continuous noise because of hunger. So he had a low continuous noise in his stomach. In simple words, Anansi was angry and hungry. Passing by a neighbor's house, Anansi heard something that pleased him. The neighbor was an old witch. She was an angry and unpleasant witch who became furious whenever anyone said her name. She hated her name. All through her life, people had laughed or looked surprised when they heard what her name was. Can you guess what her name was? So children, Anansi heard something that made him happy while he passed by a neighbor's house. The neighbor was an old witch. She was angry and unpleasant. Unpleasant means unfriendly and inconsiderate, rude. So she was an angry and unfriendly or rude witch who used to become furious. Furious means extremely angry whenever anyone said her name. She used to hate her name because throughout her life people had made fun of her name. Can you guess what her name was? It was Five. Anansi peeked through a gap in the witch's fence. She was stirring her big cooking pot and muttering and mumbling a spell. The smoke and sparks were blue and green, so Anansi knew she was cooking up some big magic. Suddenly, she snatched up her staff and started to pound it on the ground as she walked around the pot. Anansi listened carefully to what she said. I curse anyone who says the word five to disappear forever. So children, the name of the witch was Five. Anansi peeked. Peeked means to look quickly. So Anansi looked quickly through a gap in the witch's fence. She was stirring. Stirring means to mix substances in a circular pattern using a spoon. So the witch was mixing all the substances in her big cooking pot and muttering and mumbling. So muttering and mumbling means to utter words in a low, confused manner. In simple words, speech that is not clear enough to be understood. Anansi knew she was cooking up some magic. Suddenly, she snatched. Snatched means to take hold of something suddenly and roughly. Up her staff. Staff means a long, strong stick. So, the witch took hold of a long, strong stick and started to pound. Pound means to hit something hard many times so that it breaks into small pieces. So the witch took the long, strong stick and started to hit it hard on the ground as she walked around the pot. Anansi listened carefully, and the witch said that whoever would say the word 5 would disappear forever. So this was the curse. Okay? Anansi rubbed his hands together and jumped around on his 8 hairy legs. Ah, this could make me some money or get some food on the table for my family. He smiled widely and his sharp teeth sparkled. So children, Anansi was very happy to hear the curse and thought that this would help him make some money and get some food for his family. Anansi rushed to the path that ran along the river bank between the village and the marketplace. Soon, everyone who was going to the market would walk past. They would be on their way to buy the delicious yams, beets, pulses, and grains that would be piled high in the market. Anansi set to work and piled up 5 mounds of earth near the path. They looked just like he had planted 5 yams. Then he sat down and waited. So children, Anansi rushed. Rushed means to move somewhere quickly. So he quickly went to the path that ran along the river bank between the village and the marketplace. And children, what did Anansi do over there? Anansi piled up 5 mounds of earth that looked just like he had planted 5 yams. Children, a yam is a root vegetable which is like a potato and grows in tropical regions. Okay? So after piling up 5 mounds of earth, he sat down and waited. First to come by was little Mrs. Rabbit. She carried a basket full of sweet potato pieces and walked slowly because it was heavy. Anansi stepped forward and smiled. That looks like a big weight. Please rest a while and help me. I don't know how to count, so I cannot tell how many yams I have planted. Mrs. Rabbit was kind, so she stopped. She put down her basket and hopped along the row, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In a flash and a bang, Mrs. Rabbit disappeared. Anansi gobbled down the whole basket of sweet potato in seconds. He licked his lips and sat down again to wait. So children, the first to come was Mrs. Rabbit. She carried a basket full of sweet potato pieces and walked slowly because it was very heavy. As we know, Anansi was very clever, so he told her to rest for a while and help him. Anansi said that he doesn't know how to count, so he cannot tell how many yams he has planted. Mrs. Rabbit was very kind, so she stopped and came forward to help him in counting. She counted 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And as she said 5, she disappeared. And then Anansi gobbled. Gobbled means to eat something hurriedly and noisily. So very quickly, Anansi ate the full basket of sweet potatoes. Not long after, he heard little footsteps on the path and looked up. It was Mr. Duck. He walked along with his chest held high and his feet made a slip slap sound on the path. He had a bag with his lunch in it by his side. Mr. Duck stopped when he saw Anansi and asked him how he was. Anansi put on a glum expression. Mr. Duck, I have no idea how to count my yam plants. Can you help me, please? Mr. Duck bobbed his head and puffed out his chest even further. Well, Anansi, he said, it is quite simple. Start with 1, then it's 2, 3, 4, and 5. Mr. Duck disappeared instantly. Anansi ate up the lunch. So children, next was Mr. Duck. He had a bag with his lunch in it. Mr. Duck stopped and asked Anansi how he was. Anansi put on a glum expression. So children, glum means looking or feeling sad or depressed. So Anansi pretended to be very sad and depressed. He said the same thing that he said to Mrs. Rabbit. Anansi said he had no idea how to count his yam plants and requested Mr. Duck to help him in counting the yam plants. Mr. Duck felt very proud and said it is quite simple and started counting 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And Mr. Duck disappeared as he said 5. And children, what did Anansi do? Anansi ate up the lunch. Now I know you will be wondering about Anansi's family. Did he think about them? Did he save any food for them? No, he didn't. He ate everything without a thought about any of them. So Anansi was very selfish. Not even once he thought of his family, and he was eating everything alone. Next to come along on her way to the market to buy some tasty treats was Miss Frog. She did not stop, and when Anansi called after her, "Hey, please help me count my plants," she laughed. "No way, count them by yourself," she called over her shoulder as she hopped away. It did not bother Anansi too much because he knew there would be plenty more chances for him to try his trick out. He imagined what delicious foods he would find. He did not imagine taking any to his hungry children. He was going to eat as much as he could fit in his stomach and then come back and try the trick again on another day. So children, next was Miss Frog. She did not stop when Anansi called her to count his plants. But this did not bother Anansi too much because he knew there would be plenty more chances for him to try his trick out. Anansi was so mean that he didn't think even once of his hungry children. He had decided to eat everything alone and then come back and try the trick again on another day. A scurrying sound pulled Anansi out of his daydream. It was Mrs. Shrew. On her tiny back, she had a huge load of freshly made pies that she was hoping to sell. The load was 3 times her size, and her face was red from the effort she was making. "Oh, Lady Shrew, how nice to see you! Sit a while and rest. I need your help to count my plants, and you can share your wisdom." A scurrying. Scurrying means moving hurriedly with quick, short steps. Sound pulled Anansi out of his daydream. She had a huge load of freshly baked pies that she would sell in the market. Anansi tried the same trick on Mrs. Shrew and asked for her help in counting the yam plants. Anansi wanted to eat all the pies. Mrs. Shrew was not a fool. She could see Anansi's eyes glisten as he looked at the pies. "Well, Anansi, you are kind. I am tired." She put down her load. "How can I help?" "I can't count," he lied. "Can you count my yam mounds for me?" Mrs. Shrew smiled. She walked to the nearest mound and stood on it. She pointed to the mound that was furthest away from her. "1, 2, 3, 4, and this one," she said clearly. Anansi frowned. "Do it again. Say all the numbers," he said. "1, 2, 3, 4, and this one that I am sitting on." Mrs. Shrew spoke slowly and clearly. A flash of anger passed over Anansi's face. "Come on, say them properly." He was finding it difficult to keep a smile on his face. Again, Mrs. Shrew smiled sweetly and counted slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, and this one here. She pointed to the mound beneath her feet. "Or say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, shouted Anansi. Instantly, in a big burst of sparks, he disappeared. Mrs. Shrew picked up her load and set off to the market. She would sell these pies and buy mouth-watering delicacies for her family. So children, Mrs. Shrew was not a fool. She could see Anansi's eyes glisten. Glisten means to shine with a sparkling light. So she could see the shine in Anansi's eyes as he looked at the pies. Mrs. Shrew was very clever. She agreed to help Anansi and went and stood on the nearest mound and pointed at the furthest and said, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this one. Anansi frowned. Frowned means to have an angry look. So Anansi had an angry look and said to do it again and say all the numbers. She said 1, 2, 3, 4, and this one I'm standing on. Anansi was getting very angry and again said to say the numbers properly. She said 1, 2, 3, 4, and the one here, pointing at her feet. Anansi got very irritated and said, "Say like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And as he said 5, he disappeared. Now Mrs. Shrew would sell the pies in the market and buy mouth-watering delicacies. Delicacies mean small, tasty or rare food for her family. So children, the moral of the story is that greed will always bring you trouble. Now children, let's underline the difficult words. So come to page number 35. The first word is strange. Next, trickster. Next, scowl. Next, growl. Next, neighbor. Next, furious. Next, peaked. Next, stirring. Next, muttering. Next, mumbling. Next, snatched. Next, staff. Next, pound. Next, disappear. Now come to page number 36. Sparkled. Next, delicious. Next, mounds. Next, gobbled. Next, footsteps. Now come to page number 37. Glum. Next, expression. Next, bobbed. Next, puffed. Next, hopped. Next, imagined. Next, scurrying. Next, grinned. Now come to page number 38. Glisten. Next, beneath. And the last word is delicacies. Children, you will write the difficult words in your rough register and you will make sentences of the following words. The first word is charming. The second word is delicacies. The third word is pleased. The fourth word is furious. And the last word is imagined. This also you will do in your rough register. Okay, children? So you will write down the difficult words and you will make sentences in your rough register. Please read the lesson, and in the next video we will discuss the question answers, reference to context and the fill in the blanks. Thank you.